just a few moments, this courtroom will become a rehearsal space for the Chicago Bar Association Symphony Orchestra. They're lawyers and judges by day, but at night these more than 40 musicians come together to rehearse music. Tonight we'll hear selections by Haydn and Mozart as we join a rehearsal of Chicago Bar Association Symphony Orchestra and interview some of its members. I'm Ruth Kaufman. Welcome to You and the Law.
Everybody, please. Very nice seconds. Everyone in the electric. 2, 3, and yep. Piano, piano. 3 and 1.
David Katz is the founding music director of the Chicago Bar Association Symphony Orchestra and has been with them since 1986. David, would you tell us please a little bit about the founding of the orchestra?
Sure. It goes back actually to December of 1985.
Okay.
There were two cellist lawyers who sat together in a performance of the Do-It-Yourself Messiah, which Margaret Hillis used to conduct. And they had such a good time that they said, hey, why don't we start an orchestra of lawyers? And through a contact with Margaret Hillis, who I was working with the Elgin Symphony, I got called and asked to interview. And they were looking for somebody who had certainly musical skills, but also a way to make it fun for the lawyers and encourage them musically. And I was hired, and I've been doing it ever since.
Your resume is very impressive. Will you give us some of the highlights?
I've conducted all over the North America and the United States and Canada and Mexico, lots of professional orchestras and opera companies, including groups like the Detroit Symphony. And I now have an orchestra and an opera company in Connecticut that I'm professionally associated with. And still doing the lawyers. That's the one ensemble that I've had the longest in my career.
So you commute here from Connecticut.
That's right.
Every week.
That's right. I used to come from Elgin, and then I came from the Ann Arbor area in Michigan, and now I've since moved to Connecticut, and I fly in every week from Connecticut.
And is it just because you've been with the group for so long, or?
I think so. I think I'm committed to them, and I think that they're committed to me and to the kind of music that we make together. And frankly, it's fun to come to Chicago every week. I brought my wife here and my stepdaughter. They love the city, and I think they'd be disappointed if they didn't have a good reason to come here on a regular basis.
Since you have done so many other things with your career, you must see some talent in this group to make you want to continue to work with them, but they're lawyers.
Oh, sure. I think that they're, certainly the skill level is varied depending on the number of years that people have been playing. Sometimes someone will call up and say, I haven't touched my instrument since high school, can I join? And our attitude always is, yes, of course you can. This is an outlet for musicians, for lawyer musicians to make music together. And what we find is as people play and play regularly, that their skill levels improve. But I think the excitement for me is to watch the performance come together, because the group is very committed to the kind of music they make. They're very serious about it. And as a result, the performances are often very good. Although sometimes at the rehearsals, I'm not so sure what's going to happen.
Tell us about some of the places that you played, some of the concerts you performed.
With the lawyers?
Yes.
Well, a lot of our concerts are at the CBA building here. But we've also performed every year at the Harold Washington Library for their Christmas, as part of their Christmas Pop series. We do a concert free for the community. We've performed every year outside at the Daly Center for Law Day performances.
In May.
In May. We've performed at the various courtrooms around the city for various events. And we've even done some run-out concerts to some Chicago area communities as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the time commitment that these attorneys and you have to invest. You rehearse every week.
Mm-hmm. We rehearse every week, and then the week of the performances we have an additional rehearsal. And it really takes that kind of regular weekly commitment, because an orchestra is made up of different sections of instruments, strings, winds, brass, and percussion. And to really bring the piece together, you need to have all of the members there to make the performance be as good as it can be.
You have to have the blend between the groups.
Exactly.
And if they're not there, you can't tell how loud the horns are going to be, for example, compared to the strings.
At the same time, lawyers are very busy people, and they sometimes don't control their own schedules. And we've had times when people have called up at the last minute and say, a judge has kept me in a trial, and I can't get out. I don't know when I'm going to get out. I'll get there when I can get there. And actually, we had a case when a soloist arrived for a concert 10 minutes before the concert was going to begin because they were in trial and they weren't finished.
What was your most memorable concert with this group?
There are so many that come to mind, and sometimes for extra musical reasons. We did a performance of the Lincoln Portrait of Copeland, great piece for narrator and orchestra that we did with William Warfield, very famous baritone who was just recently died. Mm-hmm. And it was just a thrill to work with somebody who had gotten a Grammy Award for doing that piece with Copeland conducting, here performing on the Daly Center Plaza with the Lawyers Orchestra. That was, I think, one of the, in the land of Lincoln. It sort of brought so many things together. It was wonderful.
And I know you do other kinds of things. You did a performance of Trial by Jury a couple of years ago.
Yes, we have the distinction, I don't know if it's good enough for the Guinness Book of Records, but we have the distinction as being the first ensemble to perform Trial by Jury, Gilbert and Sullivan's operetta, in a working courtroom with a cast and orchestra made up entirely of members of the legal profession. Nobody had ever done that before, to our knowledge, and we've actually done it twice. We did it in '89 and we also did it in '95, and I think we'll probably, a couple seasons down the road, if we're all still together, we'll do it again.
That is an amazing accomplishment. We're going to be interviewing some of the other members of the orchestra during this rehearsal. Tell us a little bit about Harry Porterfield.
Sure. Harry has been, of course, a familiar face to a lot of Chicago television watchers. He's been playing in the orchestra in the violin section for about probably 8 or 9 years, I would think now. And he actually started as one of the narrators. He narrated the Lincoln Portrait with us the previous time that we performed it, and has been playing, has been a loyal member of the orchestra almost since that time.
Joining us now is Harry Porterfield. He's a featured news reporter at Channel 7 ABC, and he has also been at WBBM-TV, but yes, he is also an attorney. Thank you for joining us, Harry.
My pleasure.
And you obviously play the violin.
This is a violin, yes. Not to be confused with a viola, which is a little bit larger. No, this is a violin.
And what is your other musical background? How long have you been playing?
Well, I took lessons when I was eight years old, and I played in a number of symphony orchestras back home. I'm from Michigan. Played violin. I played viola, and then along the way, I studied the guitar and played guitar a little bit.
So what made you pursue the law as a career choice instead of music?
Well, it was really by accident. I had gotten into a situation where I had to sign a number of contracts, and I had no idea what I was doing. You know, it was 50 pages, and I was putting my name on each page, and I said, I may be signing my life away forever. And so I thought I'd try to take a course in contracts, and I was told no such thing was offered. So the dean instead said, why don't you just enroll in law school? If you want to know all this stuff,
3 years of law
enroll.
school to learn contracts?
Yeah, so he handed me a bunch of papers, and he said, you know, take the LSAT. I did, applied for DePaul, was accepted, and went through law school. That was it, got a degree.
You chose not to practice law.
Well, you know, I'm pretty busy, and it's hard to juggle the schedule being a general assignment reporter many times with a practice. It's almost impossible. You know, I'm not sure of my hours, you know, and I'm not sure what time I'm going to come, what time I'm going to leave, so it just was not very practical to think about that.
What first sparked your interest in music?
Well, I think my parents got me started at violin. And as I
That's a hard
recall,
instrument to play for a kid.
Yeah, I didn't do very
There's
well.
no frets.
That's right, it's not like a guitar. That's the way it started, and I hated the instrument, actually. You know, they forced me to take lessons, and they forced me to play. And then when it really came to me that this was something I wanted to pursue, when I got into a orchestra in junior high school, you know, and I became a part of this musical process. And then I began to appreciate the violin, and I wanted to learn more about it, and I think I became more serious about my studies, having had that experience in playing in an orchestra. From that point on, you know, I continued to study whenever I could, and play in an orchestra whenever anybody would have me. And it's gone on like that. I don't think I'm very good, but I really enjoy it, and I think for me that's enough. Yeah.
Next time. One. Ta, 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 ta,
Our next guest is Mary Callahan. She practices family law with the Legal Aid Bureau, where she is their lead attorney for domestic violence. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit first about your day job. What exactly do you do for the Legal Aid Bureau?
I'm one of the staff attorneys there. We practice solely in family law, so most of my practice is divorce, or actually all of it is divorce. And our concentration is domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. And I guess the most special thing about it is the clients are no more than 125% of the poverty level, so very, very poor clients. And we get them divorces, mostly child custody, sometimes orders of protection in the domestic violence cases, things like that.
What made you choose to practice in that area?
I've always thought that having such a privilege to get a law degree, to get a college degree, that you should give something back. And so that's what I've always thought and what I wanted to do.
And then how does music fit into all this?
It doesn't necessarily fit into my practice, but it's just something I've always liked to do. And I know that I wasn't able to play when I was in law school. It wasn't quite as fun, and it's nice to be able to do this again. So I really enjoy it.
And what is it, in addition just to getting the opportunity to play the oboe again, what else does being in the symphony bring to you?
It's nice just to have the music every week. You know, sometimes at the end of Wednesday when we have rehearsals, or I'm leaving work and I'm thinking, oh, I'm so tired, I really would like to go home, and I come here, and it just makes me feel so much better. And I walk home, you know, whistling what we've been playing for the evening. It's just really nice. It's nice to have that interaction every week.
Here is the Honorable Blanche Manning. She is a judge with the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And how long have you been with this CBA Symphony?
Since approximately 1987, I believe it was. It was shortly after it started, I joined.
So tell us a little bit about your day job.
Well, I'm a judge on the district court, and that's basically it. I hear federal cases. I've been there for about 8 years. Before that, I was on the state trial court initially, and then on the appellate court.
And you do have musical training further in your background, too.
I do. I was music major at Roosevelt University for a couple of years. I majored in clarinet.
And in addition to clarinet, you play how many other instruments?
Well, the one that I enjoy playing the most is the tenor saxophone. But I play all the various saxophones. I play the bass clarinet in the symphony orchestra currently. I previously played the clarinet, and I'm also taking vibraphone lessons.
And you are going to play that in some group, or?
I doubt it. If you go into my house, you'll see all kinds of musical instruments there, and many of them I play for my own enjoyment. I have a baby grand piano, and the vibraphones, and the flute, the tenor sax, the alto sax, the soprano sax, the baritone sax, the flute.
And what are some of the other groups you play in?
I play with the Chicago Bar Barristers Big Band, which is comprised of approximately 25 lawyers.
And that's a newer group.
That's a newer group. We maybe a year and a half or so. We play jazz, and within that group, there's also a group called the Scales of Justice, which is a combo, and it's comprised of some members of the Barristers Big Band.
But you play in other groups as well that
I
aren't.
do. I play with an all-ladies jazz band called the KCR Ensemble, and I also sometimes play with the Jazzy Ladies. And I play in my church band, and I play in another band that I put together called Diversity.
How do you have time to play in all these groups?
It becomes difficult. I play also with Chicago State University Community Concert Band and Community Jazz Band. And unfortunately, the rehearsal is on the same night as the Barristers Big Band. So I rush from one rehearsal to the next.
Is your day timer just awash with rehearsals?
It is, at least for the evening hours.
And how do you fit it all in? Because I would assume you would also want to practice some of this music in addition to the rehearsal on your own time.
Oh, sure. You have to. It's very important that you practice as a musician.
Did you always want to be a judge?
Probably from the time I became a prosecutor. I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed the courtroom, and I decided that I would like to be a judge at some point. So that was a long-term goal at that time.
I have to ask, you're clearly a very successful musician. Why keep the law in there at all? Why not just let music fill your days?
Well, I enjoy the law as well. I love the law. I just have a very enjoyable time. It's intellectually stimulating, it's challenging, and it's very enjoyable. So I enjoy them both, music and the law.
Yeah, Michael's is actually one of the founding members. He was at the very first rehearsal in November of 1986. He's played with us all those years. He's the assistant conductor. When weather keeps me from getting here, he conducts, and he's played concertos with the orchestra, and is our resident punster as well.
Joining us now is Michael Polis. He is the assistant conductor and principal trumpet for the CBA Symphony Orchestra. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you've been with the orchestra, the principal part, you've been with the orchestra a long time?
Well, I was at the first rehearsal, and I was even at one of the organizational meetings.
Back in the 1980s.
Yeah, 85, I think.
Tell me a little bit about your background with the trumpet. How long have you been playing?
Well, my father gave me his trumpet to fool around with when I was 2 years old. So
Come
I've been-
on, two?
Two. I'm not saying
Did you
that
go
it
to
sounded
Suzuki
good.
trumpet school?
No, this was a big trumpet.
Okay.
But I've been blowing on it pretty much ever since.
And did you play then all through high school, college?
Yes, and even law school, and continuing on while practicing law.
One of the things that's fascinating me is what made you choose a law career instead of a music career?
I wasn't good enough to have a music career.
Ah,
That would be one reason. It's tough to make a living in music. There are a few people at the top of the profession who really do very well, but just go down one tier, and people are just struggling, holding different jobs just to pay
stay
the
alive
rent.
kind of thing. Yeah.
So it's more fun to do it for fun and not to try to make a living at it.
So you practice law in Evanston. What kind of practice do you have?
Whatever people want. We specialize in clients with good cases, I like to say, but
And apparently you've gotten some of your other employees that through a musical connection?
actually several people from the orchestra somehow ended up at the firm. One person who we've been playing trumpet with together is of counsel to the firm. A saxophonist who soloed with the orchestra ended up joining the firm. He actually has a Grammy Award
Wow.
and plays with the Chicago Symphony sometimes.
Wow.
So we have so many musicians in the firm that I think our motto is, call us when you need a mouthpiece.
What other groups do you play with?
Well, I'm also in the North Suburban Symphony, and I sat in with the summer with the Barristers Big Band, and sometimes we've had a brass ensemble with as an offshoot of the CBA.
Have you ever had to fill in for a concert at the last minute?
Yes, actually, even in the middle of a concert, during one of our Law Day concerts, the speeches went substantially overtime, and David had a flight to catch, so he walked up to me and said, "You're conducting the last piece. See you next year."
Is that a lot of extra responsibility to be prepared to play as well as conduct?
Conducting is sort of easy and fun for me, and I actually find playing to be much harder. You know, when you're conducting, you don't have to worry about being in tune or playing a wrong note. You just sort of wave your hands, and nobody's watching anyway.
I don't think that's true. You could bring in a group at the wrong time or cut somebody off wrong.
These are lawyers. They don't worry about that. You can't cut them off.
What was the most memorable concert that you can recall playing with the CBA Symphony?
Oh, I remember one where things went awfully wrong, but I shouldn't talk about that one. One of the magical moments was when we had William Warfield join us, and we did the Lincoln Portrait, which Warfield received a Grammy Award for. And we were out in the Daly Center Plaza, and at the end he's reciting the Gettysburg Address while I would play a sort of a battlefield trumpet, very melancholy in the background. It's just an amazing experience, especially appearing with such a tremendous musician.
It is hard to describe how you can be moved by music.
Well, I'd like to think everybody's had that experience, even if it's just listening.
And what does music bring to you?
Oh, that's hard to say. It's a lot of fun. When things are really together, it's a tremendous experience. It just everything feels just right, and that happens sometimes in the law. in a trial or whatever, but not as often as in music. It's a lot easier to get that feeling when you're a musician.